Welcome back. Today's COVID kitchen. It is summertime. It's hot out there. And summertime is a great time to do some recipes that incorporate fresh berries. Like right now, strawberries are in season. I've seen some people on Instagram just out there picking berries with their families here. And so it's just, you're just gonna get a better recipe, right? When you're using berries that are in season. So that's what we're gonna do today. Today's recipe is mixed berry shortcut shortcake. We are calling it that because we're using a really cool shortcut for our shortcake. Instead of making shortcake from scratch, which really isn't that hard to do, I'm not gonna lie, you can do it. We're gonna start with canned biscuits for our recipe. We're gonna make those sweet, and then we're gonna be using some fresh mixed berries. I've got raspberries, some blackberries, and some strawberries here. We're gonna actually make a mixed berry compote with that. I'll show you how. We're going to be topping our recipe with our homemade stabilized whipped cream, which I will show you in another video. I actually have a recipe for that that I do its own video on. So those are the components of our recipe, and I'm gonna go ahead and get us started with step one. Step one for our mixed berry shortcut shortcake is to clean up your berries. See, I've got a big bowl here of rinsed off raspberries, blackberries, and I've taken the tops off of my strawberries here. Those are ready to go. I do want you to reserve just a little bit of fruit for your garnish. Depending on how many of these you're making, you might need more or less. I'm just making a couple today for demonstrative purposes. So I just have a handful of fruit, but just leave a little bit aside for us so we can make it pretty at the end. Let's talk about what you're gonna need for this recipe in terms of tools in the kitchen. We are going to be using a cookie sheet, a baking sheet, to bake our biscuits on. And because we're making a mixed berry compote, we're also going to need a little saucepan. If you want to opt for the version where there's no cooking of your berries, you certainly can. All you have to do is throw your berries into a bowl and mix them up with a little bit of white sugar. And I recommend using some citrus, orange or lemon juice, preferably fresh squeezed, in your mixture. You want that little bit of acidity. But you can certainly do that without cooking your berries. I am gonna make a compote for mine, but it actually makes this recipe go even faster if you don't cook your berries. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and preheat your oven. I'm heating mine to 350 degrees. I'm using a non-stick cookie sheet for mine, so that's the right temperature. Your biscuits, if you're using canned biscuits, will tell you what temperature you need to bake your biscuits at and the number of minutes you should allow them to cook. But we are going to be topping these biscuits with something butter and sugar. What's the difference between a regular biscuit and shortcake? It's sweetness. So we're going to take our canned biscuit and we're going to make it into a sweet biscuit by melting down some butter, and then we're going to dip our biscuit into that butter just on the top, and we're going to sprinkle it with sugar. Okay, two options there, white sugar or brown. I'm using brown because I want something a little bit deeper, gives it a little bit more caramelization, and so personal preference, but do what you like. So that's how we're going to take our biscuits and turn them into our shortcake. I should have mentioned this. Make sure that you are using a microwave safe bowl to soften your butter. I just did mine. It only took about 20 seconds to get a couple pats of butter softened here. So I've got a baking sheet ready to go, and I've got my biscuits. I'm just making 3. So what I'm going to do is start by taking my biscuit and dipping it in the butter. Then I'm going to pull that out and set it on my pan. You want your biscuits to be about 1 inch or 2 apart on your pan. So I'm going to do this for all 3. Then I'm going to sprinkle brown sugar on the top, and into the oven they go. So it looks like I've got 4. I'm gonna do this for all 4. All right, last one. Then we'll sprinkle with our sugar. That actually worked out perfect. That was just enough butter for 4. And again, I'm using brown. You can feel free to use brown or white sugar for this step. We're just gonna give it a nice coverage on top. And I think brown gives it a better flavor. So when we're done sprinkling our sugar on top of our biscuit, we're gonna go ahead and put them in the oven. We're gonna let them cook for about 15 to 20 minutes. And while that's happening, we'll make our mixed berry compote. We're back over at the stove now to make our berry compote. What is compote? It's like a chunky fruity jelly almost. You can use it to top warm desserts like bread pudding or cold desserts like frozen yogurt. You can use it on toast. The great thing about a compote like this is it stores for a couple weeks in your refrigerator. So when you make it, you can make a bunch, especially like I said in the summertime when you have a lot of berries in season and you want to enjoy them. The other good thing about it is it really doesn't take that long to make. It's, you know, probably a 10 or 15 minutes to whip this up. I'm going to start by melting my butter in this little saucepan here. And then I'm going to spoon in a couple tablespoons of brown sugar, keeping it consistent with what I did to the biscuits. Now, one thing that you'll find with compote recipes online is, like anything else, a lot of different variations. If you want it to be a little runnier, you can add water in this first step. Some people skip the butter. Some people use white sugar instead of brown. But generally speaking, it's all about controlling the consistency of your compote. I want a thicker compote because I'm doing this for a shortcake, which usually has chunks of fresh fruit. So what I don't want is a super runny, melted down version of compote. So I'm going to try to control my texture just to make it as chunky as possible. Another thing that you can control in your compote recipe at this step is the level of sweetness. So depending on how much sugar you add, obviously the sweeter the recipe is going to be. I'm going to go ahead and add these 2 tablespoons of brown sugar to mine. And I'm going to stir that in with my butter. I've got my temperature on like medium heat right now as this butter and brown sugar combined. Now I found in a lot of recipes that it called for lemon juice, and I'm doing something a little different because I like to be different. But I found in a highly rated recipe it included orange juice. So let me get my oranges and we'll squeeze that juice in. So I'm very quickly going to add a squeeze of orange juice in here. I definitely recommend using some sort of citrus in this recipe, whether you go with lemon or orange. I think it's an important addition. Now I'm going to add my berries that I have rinsed and drained to my saucepan. Oh, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to stir these, toss them. We're going to let these cook down, check on them in about maybe 10 minutes or so, and see how our sauce is doing. As you can see, our compote is cooking nicely on the stove. It's on a pretty low temperature, simmering. It's been simmering for about 7 or 8 minutes now. I want a thicker compote because I'm using it for shortcake. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of cornstarch slurry to this. I actually put like half a teaspoon of vanilla in this slurry as well, just so that I don't lose some sweetness. I'm going to pour that in slowly, and it's going to thicken this compote up for me. Totally optional if you were using this as a sauce for ice cream or yogurt or a you know, bread pudding or something like that. Probably not. Probably wouldn't do the cornstarch slurry. But we're thickening ours up nicely here. And it should be done in just a couple more minutes. The biscuits, they're out of the oven. I want to get a close up here so you can see the brown sugar and butter that's just baked into the top of these regular old canned biscuits. And those, of course, are going to be the base for our mixed berry shortcut shortcake. Here's the compote here. This is, again, a choice of strawberries, blackberries, and raspberries. Now, depending on the fruit that you use, you may or may not see seeds, and you may or may not see a lot of seeds. In this case, because we use blackberries, we have quite a few seeds. You know, it might just be a little strange to the eye, but that's what we're seeing there. I'm going to let both of these cool before I combine and plate them for our finished dessert. One of the keys to making creative, delicious meals without spending your entire life in the kitchen is to know what you can make ahead. About maybe a week ago, I made stabilized whipped cream, which has kept in my refrigerator for that week or so. I'm gonna finish using the rest of it tonight for our mixed berry shortcut shortcake. But it's a simple recipe. Again, I have a different video that shows you how to make your own stabilized whipped cream, which you can use for recipes like this. You can use it for cupcakes and cake decoration because it's stabilized. And it has just a few simple ingredients in it. So very easy to make. Heavy whipping cream, confectioner sugar, vanilla. So we're going to be using that to top our dish. But again, you can make this ahead. You could also make your compote ahead and store it in your refrigerator for a couple weeks. It is not something that you can like jar and preserve. So I wouldn't plan on that. But you could make some and keep it in your fridge stored away. So when you're ready to throw together a dessert like this one, a shortcake or something else that uses it, it's just there. And those are some of the things that make doing, you know, these kinds of recipes that seem complicated much easier to pull off. You will look like a rock star, okay, but you will not live in the kitchen to make that happen. Just saying. It's time to finish off our mixed berry shortcut shortcake. I have allowed my mixed berry compote to cool thoroughly because I'm making a cooler dessert. I wanted to have that. I've got my garnish here. I've got my chilled stabilized whipped cream here. And I've got my biscuit that was cooked with brown sugar and butter on top right here. So, first step, we're gonna take this biscuit and slice it in half. Then we're gonna start layering our other ingredients. Just a couple steps and finish with our presentation. I've got the camera tilted down here so you can really see what I'm doing. This is my biscuit that I've cut in half. Here's my top. I'm gonna set that aside. I am gonna start with my compote. I'm gonna spoon that on top. See how chunky that is? I'm gonna spoon that right on top. I described this earlier as a jelly. It's not really a jelly, it's a fruit sauce. All right. Got a nice beautiful layer of that going here. Now I'm gonna add some whipped cream. Nice big spoonful of that goes on top. And there's a lot of sweetness to the whipped cream too, by the way. So if your compote is not terribly sweet, you'll get additional sweetness and a little bit of vanilla as well from your whipped cream. So now that that's layered, I'm gonna add a little more here just to make sure I have a nice height to this dessert. I'm now going to add my crispy layer of sugary biscuit on top. And then I'm gonna do just a touch more whipped cream here. Right. And now I'm going to add some garnish. I reserved some berries here. Just give this a nice, beautiful presentation at the end. Mixing those colors up as I go around my dish. It's also giving my biscuit a little bit of stability. And then lastly, I've got a nice firm strawberry here and an adorable little mint sprig. Voila!